This is one of my favorite things to talk about is how do we go beyond the workshop? How do we make leadership development stick? And so this really is geared towards talent leaders and external coaches and consultants. If you're a facilitator or if you're working with facilitators or if you've got people calling on you to do workshops, or maybe it's a team that's saying, hey, we need you to come in and do a workshop. So that's what this webinar is really geared towards. So we're going to get started again. If you need the resource, this is the resource we're going to be working in. It has a lot more detail than the slides, so don't worry about needing the slides. The slides are less information that's on here because there's a lot of sample prompts here for a lot of the things that I'm going to be sharing with you. I'm actually going to be sharing with you design principles. So I design workshops, programs. I tend to design multi-stage programs for leadership development. I'm not a big fan of workshops to help change behavior. I tend to develop these programs that embed Cloverleaf in them. So I'm sharing with you what works, what I've seen help get behavior to actually change over time, get people to actually do things differently. I'm sharing with you some of those design principles when you're designing actual programs, designing workshops, so that you can get more mileage out of that workshop. Because as we know, a 2 or 3 hour workshop isn't going to change behavior. It might create some awareness. Okay. So, and again, I'm not saying workshops aren't valuable. They just don't solve the problem of changing leadership behavior over time. They can be great for team offsites and team building and, building trust to help people go back to the office and, know each other better. But in terms of we're trying to solve people's challenges with practicing leadership behavior over time, it's kind of like expecting someone to learn how to speak Spanish in a day. It's not going to happen. It takes time and practice, right? So leadership is like a language. We have to practice it. We have to do things over and over. So let's jump right in. We're going to do a poll. We're going to share with you some opportunities to learn and connect. This is specifically for people that are talent leaders, that are maybe facilitators, and we'll talk a little bit more about why workshops don't stick. I know a lot of you get called on to do assessment-specific workshops, so I'll share with you how you can build Cloverleaf into a DISC workshop or an Enneagram workshop, and build it into actually a real relationship. Then I'm going to actually help you apply the workshop through the feedback and scenarios feature. So you want to actually use the features that you have available to you within Cloverleaf and help extend some of that knowledge that's happening in the workshop to actually make it actionable after. And using the features in Cloverleaf, you can do that. And then also one of the great things that will help extend people's knowledge and takeaways from a workshop can be helping them to set a coaching focus. And you can do that and build that into the design. I'll show you how to build that into the design of a workshop so you can extend the learning beyond that workshop and help them focus their coaching tips beyond some of the goals they've set. A lot of times you might end a workshop having people set a goal, but where's that goal going? It usually gets written on a card somewhere and thrown away. But they can actually take that, make it actionable in Cloverleaf, and then they can get coaching tips on that goal so they can really have that goal live on. We'll obviously collect some feedback from you, you can answer some questions along the way. Jason and I'll look at the chat and we'll share with you when our next webinar is going to be. Okay, so first we want to know a little bit more about you. Oops, sorry, went too fast. So tell us a little bit about you. Are you a senior C-suite talent leader? Are you a director, manager level talent leader? Maybe you popped in here as a manager of a team. Maybe you're a coach or a consultant. Maybe you're an individual contributor because you might be like an HR business partner, but you don't have direct reports. Let us know what you identify as in terms of your role, right? Right. So take a moment to just tell us your role. Alrighty. Okay. So if you're an individual contributor and you might be identified as like an HR business partner, just in the future, you might want to answer the poll as the director level talent leader, just because it confuses us sometimes at whether you're like you just because you don't have direct reports. So just in the future for the polls, just to help us understand, even if you don't have direct reports, you would be considered a director level talent leader, even if you don't have the title director. Okay, so just for the future. All right, we'll end the poll there. I think that's good. All right, great. All right, so now I'm going to really try to be clear here around who this is geared toward, what this next opportunity I'm sharing. But we are, our co-founder, Kirsten, is going to be hosting next month a talent leader best practice exchange. This is specifically for internal talent leaders. These are people that have the title like head of talent, talent director, talent acquisition, HR director, head of, any kind of talent leader, HR business partner. These are specifically for internal talent or HR people. It's not for external coaches. It is for internal people. And it is a meeting style webinar for internal talent leaders where you can share best practices, speak and hear best practices of talent leaders, what they're doing that works to implement Cloverleaf in their organization. And our co-founder, Kirsten, is going to host this. We're going to test this out in late September 2026, and the date and time will be determined. All you need to do is fill out this brief interest form in the chat. So if you would just so again, please only fill this out if you're an internal talent leader, not if you're a manager of a team, not if you're an external coach. So what we will also I'll also send it out, but if you can just fill this out, it's super, super brief. You'll notice here, it's super brief. You're just going to fill out your first and last name. Let us just know your email address, right? And this is if you want to know, hey, how do they use Cloverleaf in onboarding? How do people use Cloverleaf in performance management? This is what you want to learn more about, okay? And then just say what your job title is. So maybe you're HR VP, okay? And then tell us what's one best practice you would love to learn about how another person in your role has been successful with, okay? So just, hey, I'd love to know how they use Cloverleaf in performance. I'd love to know how people, get managers to use Cloverleaf more. Okay, so this is specifically for internal talent leaders. Maybe you're the org admin in your organization. Okay, so Jason popped this in the chat. If you're a talent leader, again, or an L&D person, right? Again, you can fill this out and we'll let you know when this is happening. Okay. All right. Next, our fall 2026 cohorts is now open, Train the Trainer. This is for trainers, facilitators, coaches, consultants, HRBPs. It's for also external coaches. Anybody that's accountable to lead and guide teams to use Cloverleaf. They can be internal or external. It's a hybrid course. It's 4 90-minute live interactive workshops, has self-paced video modules. It starts Thursday, October 8th. And you can learn how to really help people understand how to use Cloverleaf features and lead team development sessions. It is updated again. We updated it earlier in the year. We're updating it again with scenarios and the new coaching focus. We're also running our buy one, get one free. So if you register one person from your organization, you get the second person at no cost. So Jason's going to pop that in the chat as well. I'll email it out to you as well, but this is our landing page. The schedule is all here. Everything is recorded, so not to worry. You can get all those recorded sessions if you can't make a session. Okay, but that fall cohort is open. Okay, so Jason will pop that in the chat as well. All right, let's get going about why workshops do not stick. Okay, so workshops really are great at creating insight, motivation, and shared language. People get insight from them, but awareness usually doesn't change how people act, right? They don't change their whole management style, their whole leadership style. And learning becomes more useful when people at some kind of program can answer these questions. Who do I need to work with differently? in what situation will that difference actually make it matter? Well, how will it be different the next day? Okay. What specific action am I going to take now with that person to change that interaction? And what will help me actually follow through? People need to answer those questions to actually have learning make a difference. Okay. So I know, again, a lot of you receive requests to get these DISC or Enneagram workshops, whether you're internal or external. They say, oh, come do a DISC workshop. Now, there's one key question that many of you are not asking when you get asked to run a DISC workshop. And that is, hey, can you help me understand what problem are you trying to solve? Because many times a lot of you are rushing in to do these assessment specific workshops and it's not actually what they need. Okay. They just think it's cool to do an assessment workshop. Okay. And really what they need is something much broader, much more specific. I shouldn't say broader. I said something much more specific to the actual problem. They're really having a team communication problem. And yes, knowing their DISC style can be helpful, but really there's something deeper going on that sometimes an assessment debrief can distract from, because once you start to debrief an assessment, they get hyper focused on understanding a report and they stop thinking about, oh, how can I understand other people? Because they just they get hyper focused on themselves. Okay. Now, I'm certified in DISC, I'm certified in Enneagram, I'm certified in Myers-Briggs or 16 types. People call on me to do these things all the time, but I want to understand what the real problem is before I just run in and do the assessment debrief. Okay. So we tend to focus heavily on the interpreted assessment results, which are very rarely actionable. And then people want to become the DISC analyzer expert of my report. Again, interesting, not really ever super useful because it's not actionable until I start asking, what am I going to do with this now? Okay. So actionable learning, right? Participants have to go beyond the workshop when they can identify how it's actually going to affect a relationship and choose an adjustment to practice. Okay. So this is how you want to set it up. If you're going to debrief an assessment, you've got to get it to the actionable part more quickly. And this is how you use Cloverleaf. First of all, I want everybody to let go of people using Cloverleaf in an actual workshop. You can leave the computers closed until you need to come to use Cloverleaf. I have people use Cloverleaf in workshops all the time. People are adults. If you're afraid they're going to use, email or do something, you can't control that. You're not the police. If people are going to choose to not pay attention to what's going on, you cannot control that. Okay. So give up that control. Let that go. Okay. And it's okay to let people use Cloverleaf in a workshop. Okay. So we're not third grade teachers. These are all adults. Let that go. Okay. So I let them use Cloverleaf all the time because I want them to see how they're using it so they get the insight right there. So they see and understand, oh, I could be using this every day. If you want people to use Cloverleaf more, make them use Cloverleaf when you're training. And that's how they'll start to use Cloverleaf more. Okay. So I'll say, hey, think of one person on your team who you work regularly with. Choose someone connected to an upcoming meeting, decision, feedback, conversation, or project. So if you look in your resource under this DISC and Enneagram pieces, okay, where it says this, it'll say open up Discovering Cloverleaf. And when we say that, we go right here. Okay. Now, if they want to do it, if it's connected to Slack or Teams, they can do that too. Okay. And so they can do that here, or they can do it in Slack or Teams. And use the response to identify one behavior to keep and one behavior to adjust. So you can give them these prompts. You can put this on a slide. You can I've given you prompts here. These are DISC-related behavior prompts. Okay. How might my communication approach affect Sue during our team meetings? What strengths do I bring when working with the marketing team, and when might it become less effective? Okay. So if you're doing a DISC workshop, and you can ask people, hey, what did you learn from what you saw? Matt has a question. Hold on. Let's see. Where are you, Matt? I don't see you anymore. Matt, you can ask a question if you want in the chat, but I could let you talk, but I don't see you anymore. Hold on. Matt, if you want to talk, you can talk. I just let you talk. I just unmuted you. You can unmute yourself. Matt? Or no? It's okay. Well, if you do want to ask a question, you can ask a question if you want to raise your hand again. No problem. No, okay. No. It was an accidental hand raise, but if anybody wants to ask a question, you can ask a question. Okay, so you can give them these prompts, okay? Again, these are Enneagram. If you're doing an Enneagram workshop, these are Enneagram-related prompts. So, for example, how might my desire to avoid conflict, maintain control, help succeed, or keep options open affect Jason, right? So you can give them these prompts. You can say, and I will often say to people, well, what are you noticing from what Discover gave you, right? So let's just do this right here, right? Let's see, what behavior? I'm going to put this in here, okay? So I'm going to put this in Discover. And this is our demo account. So this is not actually me. Okay, so let's see what it says. So what I'll often do is I'll have people do this and I'll say, what are you noticing from what you just entered into Discover? Just, you don't have to read me what Discover says. I'll say to them, what are you noticing? And they'll say, oh, I realize that I've been communicating with Jordan in a totally different way than Jordan probably prefers. I'm just doing what I think I would want to hear. So I'll say, okay, well, when you look at apply this, what's one thing that you want to really try? Well, I really see this building in a checkpoint for Jordan to voice questions and add context would probably really make a big difference. I don't do that, right? I just kind of move forward, right? So, okay, write that down. When are you going to try that? When's your next one-on-one, right? Do you see how that becomes much more useful than us going, okay, so do you understand page 3 of your DISC report? Right. So again, and I'm not trying to, if you're a DISC certified person, I am too. I'm not trying to, I run our DISC certification program here. I'm not trying to devalue that. I'm just saying you can't stop there. You have to keep going. And this is how it becomes real. This is how you bring it into the workplace with the relationship with Jordan. So in the workshop, you now want to take this prompt and now make it real for the person and help them actually change the behavior with Jordan beyond the workshop. Okay. And these, so that's actually, this was a, I think I copied it. Yeah, I copied it this prompt. So these are Enneagram related prompts. These are DISC related prompts. And then you could actually have a takeaway. Hey, write it down, the behavior to keep, like I just said, the behavior to adjust, and the interaction where you're going to practice it. And you can invite them if you want to keep that same person in mind as you go forward. If you're going to connect this, if you want to do more Cloverleaf embedding. Okay. So again, you want to give them ideas of how they could keep learning and growing after. And so if you show them how to use Cloverleaf, they know that Cloverleaf, they could touch Cloverleaf after and be doing something with it. Right. If you have any questions, or you can pop them in the chat. But are you seeing, what are you noticing, right? What are you noticing in what I just showed you and how that can extend the learning from an assessment debrief? Any questions? What are you noticing? Any design questions that you have? Please put them in the chat. You can also raise your hand if you have a question. I don't want to go too fast. All right. I've given you some prompts here that are related to those 2 assessments. All right. But please pop your questions in the chat. If you have them, we're going to keep moving. If you don't have any questions, I'll watch the chat. I'll stop and come back if you have any questions. Okay. All right. So I kind of worked through all of these things, but what you're trying to do is to help them make those assessments actionable. So now you really want to also help people, again, engage and practice a lot of times I get in leadership development, when I'm doing putting programs together, I get a lot of requests to include modules on difficult conversations, conflict, giving feedback. These are top requested modules. I tend to, people will come to me and ask for a workshop, by the way. I will help them understand that instead of doing a full day workshop, let me do a half day kickoff and some follow-up modules. And I will put Cloverleaf challenges at the end of those modules, and they use Cloverleaf to practice in between. And I will convince them and I will help them understand that this is what will help leadership behavior get trained, that I cannot help solve their leadership behavior problem in a full day. It's not going to happen. Okay, so you want to use this. What I'm going to share with you now is after participants explore leadership or team insight. So maybe you're training people on, again, conflicts, and you want to connect it to a specific team member or a team. So it works well in your leadership development if you're doing a workshop on communication, feedback, conflict, building trust, delegation, accountability, coaching, change, team effectiveness. Any of these topics can work. Again, a lot of these are all connected, so you can see how it'll work. So you can choose an approach. If you want people to focus on feedback, and you're trying to help participants learn how someone else experiences their behavior, that's one option. If you're inviting people to sort of practice an upcoming interaction, that's another option, another design option here. So you want to complete this activity before creating a coaching goal or action commitment. So the coaching focus is going to be the last feature you're going to invite them to use at the end of the workshop. And again, you're trying to help them go beyond the insight of this workshop. So option A is you're going to be encouraging people to request feedback using Cloverleaf. Okay. This is best if anything you're doing in this workshop is encouraging people to increase their level of self-awareness. Maybe you're doing an emotional intelligence workshop. Maybe you're doing a workshop on how to give feedback. Maybe you're doing a workshop on how to solicit feedback. Maybe you're doing a workshop on how to understand your team and build trust with your team, communication, collaboration, behavior change, how to increase the productivity of your team. Again, I'm just throwing out topics that you could possibly be doing that could, that would make sense for this. So as a facilitator, you're going to guide the participants to identify a behavior from maybe something they learn in today's workshop that affects how they work with either a person or someone on their team. And they're going to choose someone who has directly experienced that behavior. Okay. So someone just asked a question. No, I'm talking about using Discover in the actual workshop. So I'm having them do the learning in the workshop. So I'm saying if you are actually teaching them something, I'm having them use it I'm actually having them do the workshop. Okay. And we'll resend the link to the cohort. I will email the link to the cohort. If it's not working, I'll email it. Yes, thank you. So yeah, I'm talking about doing this in the context of the workshop. So I'm not, so they have already I'm assuming they've already taken an assessment and they're already in, and that I'm having them actually do it. They're on Cloverleaf, right? So when I'm talking about requesting feedback, I'm inviting all the participants to choose someone who maybe has directly experienced the behavior that maybe they have identified, right, in that workshop. So maybe they've identified that, let's say they're even in a DISC workshop and they've identified that they're a high D and they go really fast. And they know that there's somebody on their team that probably needs them to go slower, okay? That needs them that maybe is an S and needs that, maybe responds differently to change. And a D kind of moves fast and changes quickly, okay? And maybe they know that there's a person on their team that experiences that. And that you're going to invite them to open up feedback in Cloverleaf to create a request. So you're going to do this in the workshop, okay? So you're going to invite them to, in Cloverleaf, create the feedback request. Okay, so they're going to create the feedback request. It's for themselves. They're going to say, oh, I work with Jordan, and I know Jordan probably works a little, works at a different pace than I do. Okay, and they're going to go and type the question. Okay. So they're going to create the request. They're going to select a suggested question, or they're going to write their own. Now, here's what I did for you. I gave you some sample requests. What could I do that helps you contribute during our marketing team meetings? What could I adjust to communicate more clearly with you during project timeline setup kickoffs? Okay. What do we need when we need to make a decision quickly? How does my approach affect you? Right. So maybe that's something I want. Maybe because that's a perfect question I could ask Jordan. Maybe I know that I move quickly, and I know that sometimes I sense Jordan is affected by that. So maybe that's the question I want to ask Jordan. When we make a decision quickly, how does my approach of moving very fast affect you, right? Maybe I want feedback on that. So I add that question and I send that to him. Okay. So you're inviting people to sort of identify, okay, you've uncovered a behavior, maybe in this workshop, right, that you can see may be difficult for other people. Think of someone on your team who may be having trouble with that. And now you're going to ask for feedback because you want to understand the impact, right? Maybe you're in an emotional intelligence workshop. Hey, let's understand the impact of our behavior on other people on our team if we're trying to build trust. Okay. What is part of emotional intelligence is also being able to read the room, right? What helps us read the room? Understanding how people perceive us, right? Sometimes we can't always understand, and we do need people to tell us, right? But this will also give us more helpful data to help us understand how we can better lead people. Right. So again, they don't have to use the questions that you give them, but you can give them these sample questions. Okay. And then they can sort of say, okay, what's the behavior I want feedback on? This is the person I will ask. This is the situation I've observed and the question I'm going to send. Okay. They can send the request during or after the workshop. I suggest you have them do it during the workshop. Okay. Now, let's say you have a second workshop coming up, or let's say they're going to be working with a coach. Hey, work with your coach on based upon what the question, based upon the feedback that comes back from Jordan. Okay. Or talk with your manager based upon the feedback that comes back from Jordan. Right. This is how you get people to extend learning beyond that 2-hour workshop, beyond that half-day workshop. Something happens that will actually change behavior because Jordan's feedback is going to come back and a light bulb may go off. Okay. All right. So you want to make sure that the question is specific, it's connected. I also suggest, if you're working with leaders, this is also very helpful. Let's say a leader is struggling, or a leader is a new leader. It's helpful to write the same question to every team member. Hey, can you share with me, what you most need from me right now as your leader? And if you ask that same question to every single team member and you look at all those answers and see where the trends are, you, as a leader, you can start to understand what people need from you. Okay. So when I'm coaching people, I will often suggest they ask that same question to everybody through there. Right. All right. So option B in a workshop is you can invite people to practice a conversation using the scenarios feature. So if you haven't seen the scenarios feature, Jason, you might want to just drop the scenarios help document. I'm not going to demo the whole feature. I've demoed it on a couple of webinars, but you can look at the help doc. But basically what you do in the scenario is you can pick a person. You're going to say what you want to practice. I want to practice giving difficult feedback to, about a missed deadline. And you say who you're going to practice with. Jordan's going to get all the things today. Okay. And you say who you're going to give the feedback with. And what am I missing? I can't see a button here because of Zoom. Oh, yes. Okay. Create the scenario. Okay. Okay. And then you start to have a role play back and forth. You can type or speak, and then you get an evaluation. Okay. So if I click start scenario, the role play would go back and forth. It would look like a chat screen. Okay. And it will tell you how, based on Jordan's assessment results, it will tell you how Jordan likes to communicate. Okay. Now, the best part about it, I believe, so after you go and have the role play is the evaluation. Okay. So the evaluation, right, gives you, after you have the conversation, don't focus on, is this what the person would actually say? It's not about that. It's about evaluating your responses, because once you have the chat, Cloverleaf will give you feedback on how you did and some recommendations, so that when you go to have the conversation, Cloverleaf's evaluating you. And that's what you want to focus on. Not, is it exactly what they would say? Okay. Okay. So you use this option to rehearse a real conversation, specifically if you're doing a workshop about difficult feedback, about difficult conversations, about conflict, about that difficult employee that always sort of pushes your buttons, or about influence or change, okay? About setting expectations. So as a facilitator, you're going to guide participants to identify an upcoming conversation where maybe today's workshop topic will matter. And you're going to open scenarios in Cloverleaf and select the team member name. So you're going to say, okay, everybody, who do you want to have a conversation with? You're going to have them open up Cloverleaf just like I did, describe the conversation, and begin the role play. So what I did here was I sort of gave you some opportunities, some examples to share with your workshop participants, maybe giving someone difficult feedback, addressing a missed expectation, delegating a new responsibility. Maybe they have to tell a team member, hey, I'm going to be giving this responsibility to you. Maybe it's discussing a resistance to change with someone. Maybe it's repairing tension or trust. Maybe they had a falling out with someone. Or maybe it's gaining support for a decision. Maybe they have to talk to their boss. Okay. And so you're going to ask the participants to stay in the conversation rather than stop to analyze every response. Encourage the behavior encourage them to practice whatever you were training them in the workshop, especially when maybe the exchange becomes uncomfortable. And then you do want to have them do this in the workshop, as I suggest, because you want them to actually do it and then review the evaluation, right? And then ask them, hey, what landed well? Where could you have been more clear or effective? Where did you miss important context? Because when you have them review the evaluation, they can share with you where they think they need to improve. And this activity, even though it's an activity that's private, they can share with you what they see, what they're learning. You can find out if they applied what you just taught them right there. That's what we do as trainers. We want to know. We want to assess the learning. You can assess the learning right there. Okay. Cloverleaf has built in your activities for you. You don't have to go and do the marshmallow challenge or bring a bunch of spaghetti and marshmallows and tape. Okay. So you can have your activities built in right here. Okay. And so you want to guide them to respond as they would. Use this practice to test your approach. Observe how you would adjust in the moment. Right. Any questions about that? Any questions about that? And again, Jason popped the scenarios feature all in the chat. Okay. And then at the end of the workshop, what you want to do is invite everybody to set a coaching focus for continued development. And so you want to use it to turn that day into ongoing development. And you're going to guide the participants to identify the insight or behavior that would make the biggest difference in your work with a person or their team, or maybe themselves. So you're going to guide them to open the coaching focus in Cloverleaf, which I'll go over. Jason will also pop the coaching focus help document in the chat. Describe the skill, challenge, or team dynamic they want to strengthen, and use ongoing coaching to apply learning to your daily work. So what do I mean by that? So you're going to guide them to just go to coaching focus. They're going to create a new coaching focus. Maybe you just did an entire workshop on conflict, and what they learned is, I want to work on managing and mitigating conflict with the product team so that I can increase transparency and honesty on the team. Maybe that's what the person has discovered, right, at the workshop. Okay. For the next, and I always recommend this, just say for the next 6 weeks, because if you do this in the prompt, then it'll automatically set it up. Okay. So you invite them to do that right in the workshop. Okay. When they create the coaching focus, okay, it asks you a couple of questions. Which of these conflict patterns tends to show up? Well, tension builds quietly and surfaces at the wrong moment. Yep, that happens. What's making it hardest to build transparency? Well, there's not enough trust to have honest conversations yet. That's what it is. 6 weeks from now, which of these would signal real progress? We can raise disagreements without escalating. My team feels confidence about where things stand with products. How often would I like it? A couple times a week. That means I don't want all my coaching tips to be about this, but I want it maybe once a week. I want it to be about this. Okay. And so what it's now doing is it's building my coaching tips with those people on my team. And once a week, it's going to send me one of those tips. So you're inviting people at the ends of the workshop to now have Cloverleaf deliver them tips related to what you just taught them, which is how now it all becomes actionable. Okay. Oops, sorry. Any questions about that at all? Any questions? You can set up more than one coaching focus. So they don't have to, they can amend it at any time. Okay. But now nothing that you just told them will completely evaporate. They're now going to get coaching tips related to what you just told them. So now it's all going to become actionable. Right. And if they do it in the session, then it's done. If you tell them to do it after, about 20% of people will do it, just so you know. If you do it in the session, they'll do it. It'll get done. All right. Any questions at all?